Hi Ajay and hi Rohit. Thank you for joining me on this Q&A session today talking about investments being made into India from the UK and how India is a desirable business destination. Just to introduce you both to our viewers, today I'm going to be speaking to Ajay Sethi, the managing partner of ASA Associates, a full-service accountancy firm, and Rohit Singh, the director and India board member at UK India Business Council. So let's start. Rohit, how do you see India's attractiveness as a business destination for UK businesses?
Thank you, Nisha, for the question. As you know, India and the UK are already the fifth and sixth largest economies in the world. Both are leading democracies, and our industrial strengths are complementary. Both the countries are among the top investors in each other. In fact, our bilateral trade reached to a level of 23.3 billion pound in the year 2019, just before the pandemic hit. Our countries also cooperated on vaccines and other important resources throughout the pandemic. To further strengthen this relationship, both the governments have announced the enhanced trade partnership in May this year and rolled out a 2030 roadmap with an aim to develop bilateral trade in the next 10 years. There is also a positive intention and movement in the direction of free trade agreement dialogues. India's improving ease of doing business environment and economic growth projections in the post-COVID era is promising. And India is expected to become the third largest consumer economy by 2030. Therefore, there is no doubt, and I'm extremely excited and confident on the India's attractiveness to the UK businesses and the opportunities that it presents in the areas of export, investment, and sourcing.
That's great. Thanks, Rohit. Ajay, what do you think are the key criteria that UK SMEs need to keep in mind when entering into India?
So let me begin, Nisha, by telling you what is the mistake SMEs make, not just British, but for the matter, many companies from outside. Three buckets would kind of explain what they do. One, they think India is one large market. That's the first mistake everybody makes. Second, they think it's a homogeneous market. That's the second mistake which they think, that you bring in goods and it'll work anywhere. The strategies they've used in one location will work everywhere. The third, which they're used to, because you go to China, you go to any developed country, remember that country has no demand problem. They have a supply problem. Countries which like China, Japan, and other developed nations, they have a very unique problem. They have a problem of demand. Whereas India has a problem of supply, and that is where the challenge sits. So these are the three big issues which SMEs don't understand well in India. It's not a single market, it's not homogeneous, and we've got a supply chain problem. Mm-hmm. And SMEs coming to India, when they're looking at India, should address these issues in that particular manner. Every location, cultures, habits, food taste, religion, all this has an economic impact as well. And that is one thing you should build into your go-to-market strategy.
That's really useful to know. Thanks, Ajay. Rohit, it's now coming up to a decade that UKIBC has been helping and supporting UK businesses entering into the Indian market. What kind of inquiries do you generally see from people getting in touch with you?
Nisha, UKIBC has held and supported more than 300 to 500 UK businesses across sectors, scale and size over these years. Businesses come to us at a different stage of their India entry, some at the exploration stage to understand the opportunities that India has to offer, some at the stage of deciding their entry strategy, and some at the stage of further scaling and growing their existing business in India. Accordingly, their questions and need for support also differ. For many, their key questions revolve around, is there a market in India for my products and services? How my competition looks like? What are the applicable tax, legal, and other regulatory compliance for my line of business? How I can get my product registered in India? How the supply chain is structured? What kind of partners I should work and can find in India? How I can set up my business and recruit staff in India? How my India entry strategy should be designed? We also receive inquiries for finding suppliers, contract manufacturers, or setting up their manufacturing base in India. In fact, I've seen an increase in number of supplier search and manufacturing inquiries in this COVID era, partly also contributing to the global sentiment of supply chain de-risking, by looking at alternatives in the Asia region, where India remains an attractive destination to invest.
That's really interesting. That's a lot of reasons to query, make inquiries with UKIBC. And finally, Ajay, are there any regulations that UK SMEs need to be particularly aware of when investing into India?
Well, one thing we have got as a legacy from our last masters is a chunk of bureaucratic issues which we have fallen in love with. So there's lots of stuff there. But if I was to just take it on a bigger, broad basis, one is if you come to India, you could either choose a distribution route. So that's the simple one, and Rohit has already alluded to that. Second is you decide that you want to have a very permanent base out here. You want to fix yourself in, which means you do a joint venture, you do a wholly owned subsidiary, or you decide to come as an LLP, limited liability partnership. Or you could decide just to experiment with the market, in which case you come as a liaison office to test the market, or you come as a branch where you come and really operate in the market with some limited risk to yourself. Now, in the temporary structure, which is a liaison office or branch office, the catch is that these are extensions of the foreign companies, and these are regarded as permanent establishments, and they suffer very high taxes in India. So normally the structure we see ends up to be a company. Now, if you come in as a private limited company, which is what an SME structure is, while I can give a whole list, I think I can put it down to 6 points. One, on direct taxes, if you're coming in, and if you're going to be dealing with your parent company, look at your transfer pricing study. Look at also your risk of being classified as a permanent establishment. So that's the first one you should look at. Second, indirect taxes. Customs is one area where everybody looks in, but the new goods and service tax, GST, the HSN classification, we see people, because there's so many classifications. You do a wrong classification. Let's say you did a classification under 18%, and later on the government discovers after 2 years that you should have been under 28%. The notice and penalties could become a suffer. Then the third one would be Foreign Exchange Management Act. Many people come under the automatic route, forget to register with the Reserve Bank of India, which is a very basic thing, doesn't take even a time. But later on, when you're repatriating funds, you hit a problem. Number fourth, which comes into the list, is corporate law. If somebody is becoming a director in India, what are the responsibilities and regulations governing a local director? That also has got to be looked into. Employment laws. Now, the new employment laws, the labor codes have yet not been notified, which are more or less in sync with the earlier ones, but they are making new rules for hiring, firing. There are new rules for trade union management, dispute resolution. One must know these well. And last and not the least, IP. If you're very particular about your IP, register it in India. While India has signed conventions with most countries, leaving out the Hague Convention, I think it is very useful to register your IP in India and ensure full protection. So these are the 6 points I would give any SME to ponder over, though I can give an endless list, but I think 6 will cover up well.
That's great. That's really good. Good for our viewers to know. Thank you, Ajay. I think that's the end of our speedy Q&A session. So thank you, Ajay, and thank you, Rohit, for participating. And we hope that this has been really useful for our viewers. Thank you.
Thank you.